Before we begin the show, I feel it necessary to say this. While legally speaking, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, I at Welcome to Geektown feel it is vitally important to believe victims. While we will be discussing Jonathan Majors and his performance throughout this deep dive, please do not consider this to be an endorsement in any way of his personal behavior. And if you have experienced domestic abuse and need help, please call 1-800-799-7233. Thank you, and now on to the show.
Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 167 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I need to do a quick shout out to my patrons for this month, which are Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. Thank you as always for your support. With the deep dives being longer than my usual scripted shows, we'll get started right away with Anne and I discussing the double meaning behind the title of this week's episode of Loki. Let's start with the title. The heart, actually, no the, is just Heart of the TVA. And we learn from... we get reminded from the recap that the heart of the TVA is the loom.
Yep. Well, I mean, therein lies part of the question. The loom is the device, but who, if you're thinking about the who is the heart of the TVA, I think we have a bit of push and pull through this episode.
Okay.
Who really has the heart of the TVA's mission within their own heart or being?
Okay. That's a good question.
We're presented with several arguments throughout this episode.
We're presented with several options, and some of them are obviously wrong.
Yeah.
If you were going to answer that question just based on the 4 episodes we've seen this season, would you have an answer for that?
Yes.
Is it Mobius or is it Loki?
Neither.
B-15?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Debating my own answer here. She might be a little too, we need to let all the branches be who they are and do their own thing. She might not be as pro control over avoiding multiversal wars and issues. But I still lean B-15. I don't know. It really just might be because I like her.
I do like her as a character, and we get to see more of her this episode than we have recently.
Well, and let me point out something else about B-15 since we're talking about her here. I'm sure you've noticed has not worn armor for a while. She might have a little bit in episode 1, but I don't think we have seen her in armor at all since then. So I feel like she's taken this mid-place between a Minuteman, where she started, and an agent, which is where Mobius is.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And she's definitely not a judge.
No. There don't seem to be anyone actively judging right now. We do have one who still has the title of judge, but there are no trials going on at the moment.
And they got bigger.
They're a little busy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not pulling variants off the timeline, so I mean,
well, yeah,
not really anybody to judge. Not that the judgments ever actually meant anything.
Well, the judgments meant something, but the trials were just, do you plead guilty? No? Okay, well, you're guilty. So, and I love how this episode opens with us traveling down the timeline to get to the end of time.
The music that they chose here, they skipped the Marvel theme completely. And it had that big choral ness that is very Bergman.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, we're talking like Seventh
Seventh
Seal
Seal.
kind of levels of sound, 2001 levels of sound, which is Kubrick, not Bergman. But, and I sound so pretentious right now. I love it. And the travel down the timeline, those branches have stopped looking like branches. The TVA, they look like branches. But when just traveling through time, it looks like a circulatory system. Like you're looking at veins and arteries and capillaries, but it's a very visceral kind of look.
Yeah. And we are back at the Citadel at the end of time.
Still crumbling and corpse ridden.
Yes. And Miss Minutes is going to share her secret with Ravona.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just give a little I was right here?
Oh, yes. Yes, in fact, you were. Good job.
Thank you. She does reveal the fact that Ravona and He Who Remains were working together in an earlier iteration of the TVA, but that He Who Remains had all of their memories wiped.
Yep. Well, and He Who Remains tells Ravona exactly what she wants to hear before he sets her off. And that is the recording that Loki had in episode 1.
Yes.
But yeah, he tells her precisely in the way that she would respond, exactly what she wants to hear until he sends her through the time door. And after that, there is a very distinct look of regret and a little "I'm sorry" before issuing Protocol 42.
Of course, it's 42.
Don't know what that means. You have officially lost nerd points and need to go read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Listen, the show now comes with a watching and reading list. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You occasionally you have to do your homework.
Uh-huh.
And so you all, if you don't already know what 42 represents, go read, watch, listen, ingest Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in one form or another.
It's the book I still cite as my favorite book. I'm bad at picking favorites, though.
And I just have to call out the special effects here.
The miniatures?
The miniatures, the fact that you could see Ravona looking over them as they have their meeting here. The recreation that Miss Minutes made in miniature of the Citadel and having those two comped against each other. It was gorgeous, seamless work.
Well, and it makes it a live action dollhouse. But beautiful work.
And I had assumed last episode that Sylvie had trapped Ravona here, but you were right on that one in that the tempad is perfectly working, and Miss Minutes is like, hey, we don't need He Who Remains. I don't think we ever did.
Renslayer did all the work. You know,
it does seem that way, doesn't it?
She seems to have done all the work to create and run the TVA. They don't need this guy.
Although I wonder how much he did from afar through the timekeepers.
Right. And I mean, Renslayer is not without her ego. So there could be a whole lot of, it looks like I did everything around here, therefore I can do it again, without really understanding the scope of what that is.
Yeah. And now, given the relationship between Ravona and Kang in the comics, I was a little surprised to learn that there wasn't any romantic aspect to their relationship beforehand.
Yeah, I think this might be a deliberate choice on the showrunner's part, because, I mean, like I was saying last week, that it looks like most of the women are motivated by some sort of romantic feeling in here. And I think somebody caught that, you know, in the script writing process, and they said, you know what? No, let's
back off that a little bit.
Let's back off that. Let's put the corrupted romance on Miss Minutes and just have Ravona be, I don't know if you're going to need to bleep this or not, just have Ravona be head bitch in charge.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to censor that.
I wasn't sure how delicate your audience was.
Anyways, we should probably get back to the show. After we get our discussion between Ravonna and Miss Minutes, we then arrive back at the TVA as Victor arrives in the TVA. Although there's just it's one of those little nitpicky things that bothered me, which is the door closes on him.
Mm-hmm.
The time door closes. But last episode, he walked through and the door was left open. And then there's a little bit of conversation, but then Loki and Mobius walk through that same door.
That seems like either a continuity error or a special effects cheap out, where they just wanted to cut however many special effects shots there were.
Yeah, I guess.
Because I think when Loki and Mobius appear, we just get the sound effect.
Well, they come out of that room into the hallway. Mm-hmm. We don't even see, or I don't think we even hear the door necessarily because they're far enough away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Victor gets to wander around a little bit and meets up with B-15.
Well, before that, he ends up in the conference room and is staring at the giant bas-reliefs of himself.
Yes.
And there is a certain amount of terror at that. You know, he's both impressed with himself and terrified of the potentiality. He then leaves the conference room and ends up in front of the mosaic of the timekeepers with the symbolic founding of the TVA.
Yeah.
That's the branches.
And over on the left side of that mosaic are Kangs fighting each other.
Yep. Exactly.
Showing the multiversal war, and then the timekeepers taking over and saying, no, none of that here. Not in our multiverse.
And here's where I looked up the thing I had mentioned in episode 1 about mosaics. Kind of. I went a slightly different direction. Mosaics were very common in Soviet public space art, essentially.
Yes.
They were often generally ignored by the public because they were too simple for some reason. I did share a link with you with a guy who's working on documenting a lot of these, especially in the Ukraine. But they're gorgeous. And we've talked about the communism feel of the TVA, and this just helps reinforce that. The bas-relief also continues to match Soviet art, public and monumental art. I highly recommend looking up Soviet mosaics because they are beautiful.
Yeah, if I can remember, I will try to include the link to this article that you sent.
Okay, yeah.
Because there are, some pictures of various mosaics, and you can definitely see the influence that they had on the artwork in the show.
And let us point out that the TVA is made up of things that existed but didn't stick, as did communism, especially Soviet communism.
This is very true.
Yeah. That's why this all feels like it's once again an idea that didn't stick. I also want to mention when B-15 shows up, her reaction to Victor, because she is literally seeing God in his temple.
True. Although, other than the conference room, she really has never seen him.
She hasn't, but
that
he
she
also
remembers.
Does bear some resemblance to the timekeepers. Oh, you're giving me a look. I saw it.
The timekeepers are weird lizard people.
They look a little bit like Jonathan Majors.
That's a stretch to me.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Well, I'll stop stretching then.
But, I mean, you can feel free to have your opinion. I'm not going to say it's necessarily wrong. It's just that I definitely did not see it.
Fair enough. But as you were saying, everybody wants Victor. He's being pulled in 19 different directions. My favorite of this is the effervescent clock lady monster thing wants me. And the thing that convinces him to choose a direction is when the power fluctuates and he knows that the loom is the thing that needs him.
Well, I think what he does is he points down and he says, "Is that my loom?"
Mm-hmm.
I think what he's pointing at is the TVA logo on the floor, because there's that big hourglass shaped thing. And I think that's what he's identifying as his loom.
Okay. Hadn't occurred to me, but I can see that.
And they say, yes, that's your loom, and we need you to fix it.
Right.
You're the only one, your only hope, timely Juan Kenobi.
Accurate.
And then we cut from there, and we get that nice conversation between B-15 and Judge Gamble.
Yeah.
You know, Carla and I talk about the show after our discussion of Gothamites, and she points out that for a show called Loki, there's a whole lot of not Loki going on.
That's fair. But I feel like once you get into a second season, you start expanding your universe a bit.
Yeah.
And we are now dealing with problems that are not Loki's expertise.
True. And for me, it's not necessarily a complaint.
Yeah.
If the show gets renamed TVA the Show, I would be totally fine with that. Because I love this conversation between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I love both of these actresses.
Yes. Yeah, Liz Carr has been showing up in a lot of very prominent nerd properties in recent years. Between the most recent season of Good Omen, she was in the last 2 seasons of Witcher, and now she's in this.
Yeah.
She's been kicking around for a lot longer, but she's in some very prominent properties.
And in very pivotal roles in those stories. And they're sitting there trying to decide what they should do with Dox and the other Minutemen who pruned all those branches, who bombed all those branches. And sure, they used to prune people, that was simple, clean, and efficient.
Yep.
But that's not the way it works anymore. That they want to do better.
Mm-hmm.
And this does point towards your feelings of B-15 being the heart of the TVA here, because she was the one who was able to convince Judge Gamble that's not the way we should do things. So Judge Gamble says, go talk to Dox.
Yes.
She wants to protect the TVA. She should be able to protect this new version if you can convince her that it's worth protecting, just like she did the old one.
Yeah, B-15 is trying to hold the TVA together with both hands in order to reshape it.
Yeah, and doing a decent job with what she has.
Mm-hmm.
She's very convincing, you know, for someone who was basically just a soldier not that long ago. She's stepping into more of a leadership position very handily. Which
does make me wonder, and I've wondered this before, what exactly the letters signify in the Minuteman ranks. Because we have an X5, we have a D90, and we have a B-15.
Yeah.
And maybe they signify nothing, but they also might signify like where you are in the organization.
It's possible. I tend to think that they are just random letters.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a possibility. Back in season 1, when they had the scene when Renslayer was still a hunter, I didn't notice her designation.
Yeah.
Might be interesting to go back and check. Insert designation here. A23, which does lend credence to Anne's point. However, as I then pointed out, X5, he seemed to be in a fairly high position as well in the scenes when he was still just X5. So it's not like low in the alphabet is high ranking and high in the alphabet is low ranking.
It may be more of a job placement, like the X's are the guys you send in to, beat people up, while the B's and C's are those you send in to contain and prune.
Yeah.
This is all wild guess and supposition here. We have no idea.
Oh, absolutely.
It could just be like class ranks, essentially. This is the new batch. This is the old batch,
But yeah, we finish up that conversation, and then we get to Victor meeting Casey and OB. Are you laughing at the squeak?
The squeak was beautiful. But this is when we actually spell out the Ouroboros thing.
Yes.
Everybody, Victor and Obi have based their work off the other's work. So it is now the snake, and Obi even says it's the snake eating its tail.
Yeah, I definitely noted that specific line. The fact that Ouroboros, which is the symbol of a snake eating its own tail, says it's like a snake eating its own tail. And in time travel terms, this is referred to as a bootstrap paradox.
Ah, a bootstrap paradox. That makes sense.
Because you are basically creating information out of nowhere. You are pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, which, for those of you who are unaware, that saying comes from the fact that it's impossible, that you cannot do that.
Yep.
So if anyone ever tells you, oh, you should just be able to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, remind them that that's actually an impossibility because of physics.
I actually had a college professor who wrote a book, and this was before we were having public conversations about it, that it's also impossible to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps if you don't have boots or you don't have the straps.
Yeah. The classic bootstrap paradox story is a time traveler who is a giant fan of Mozart goes back in time to meet Mozart and brings all of his sheet music with him to be like, hey, can you sign my notes for me? Or, can you sign my sheet music? And then goes back and discovers Mozart's not there.
Yeah.
So he then publishes his work and basically becomes Mozart. But then you ask, who wrote that music? So I love the various paradoxes in time travel discussion, the bootstrap paradox, the grandfather paradox, all those sorts of things.
Well, let me give you a deep nerd cut then. Deep.
Okay.
The show Gargoyles from the 90s. Xanatos always claimed to be a self-made man, and his father was like, no, you weren't. You found some coins. You got lucky. And it turned out it's because Xanatos went and buried those coins in ancient Greece, so he knew where to find them.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
So he is
Yes,
self-made in a way.
Yep.
Interesting.
As I said, that one's kind of a deep cut.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but when Victor and Obi start realizing that, they're working off each other's work, Loki jumps. He gets it just a hair before they do, and he goes, what? Oh.
Huh. I didn't notice that even on my third time watching through.
Yeah, no,
I definitely noticed Victor's squeak when he realized that it was Ouroboros.
The hero worship that happens within the repairs and advancement department is adorable. I mean, Casey's got it for Ouroboros, and then Ouroboros has it for Victor.
For Victor, and Victor also has it for Ouroboros.
And then Sylvie says, okay, break up the bromance, because she is so tired of watching these men congratulate themselves.
Well, at least they're congratulating each other.
Yes.
But yeah, and so Obi shows his plan for how to fix things. And this kind of answered a question I had in an earlier episode. Where the throughput multiplier, I was like, this looks exactly like the temporal aura extractor. Well, they both have to fit into the launcher.
Yeah.
That's why they look alike. It's because they both
missile,
fit into the same port.
Yeah. Two different types of missile, but they both fit the same fuselage because they're going out the same launcher. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that now makes sense to me.
And once again, we have miniatures in action.
Obi is so cute with his, I'm sorry, I only got to do one coat of paint.
Yep.
I didn't get to carve out figures for all of us.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. Of course, his priorities are completely in the wrong place. But this should be the quickest, dirtiest model of like, look, gangway.
Yeah, seriously. I can't think of a long thing that would be lying around to be a gangway, but like, here is a basketball for the loom, and here's a guitar neck for the gangway, and here's an Oreo for you.
Yeah, exactly. Spending that kind of time on that sort of thing. You know, Sylvie kind of points it out.
Yeah.
There's no clock that ticks in the TVA. They all kind of think they have forever.
Yep.
And so they're not good at dealing with a deadline. They kind of need Loki and Sylvie there to be like, come on, guys.
Let's go.
Let's do this.
Well, and in season 1, as Loki was going through the bureaucracy ground slowly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there did not seem to really be emergencies. It was, oh, there's a branch, let's go prune it. Tra-la-la-la-la. Everybody seemed to move at a pretty sedate, robotic pace, and now they need to move with a purpose.
Yeah.
Did you notice as OB was demonstrating with the miniatures what they need to do, the sound effects?
No.
Because the sound effects matched the actions. While the little dude was going down the gangway, the sounds of the outside of the loom, overworking got louder. And then when he put the MacGuffin, because I can't remember what it was called, into the launcher and then launched it, when Obi picked it up to launch towards the whiteboard loom, there was a to it that was underneath, and it was very cartoony again.
There are a couple of moments in here that had a little bit of that cartoon feel to it, which is interesting. It's like they brought it back with them from the
from 1893. Yeah,
comes along with Victor.
I think you might be right, actually.
But as of this moment, the plan, even as they have it, still isn't going to work. Because the part they've made, the throughput multiplier, still isn't able to deal with that many branches.
Right.
But fortunately, Victor has just the part to make it work.
Of course he does. And here we get this beautiful artistic contrast between the mid-century kind of grubby mechanics of the TVA and Victor's very elegant clockwork.
Mm-hmm. It's very steampunk.
It is very steampunk. And it has, the movements in it are graceful. The appearance is graceful. It looks like a little brain. Yeah, it really is like a little brain.
With a bunch of gears and stuff inside rotating around. Yeah, it's a very, as you said, a very elegant looking device compared to the brutalism.
Yes.
Of the normal TVA.
Yeah, pure function, very little form.
Yeah. I kind of skipped over it, but I love the banter between Loki and Mobius about who needs to actually run the multiplier down the gangway. And on my second viewing, I was like, you could just pluck a Quicksilver out of the timeline.
Seriously. Shoot, we've got 2 if you go the right time.
At least.
Yeah.
You've got all these branches now. Just pick one from one of the timelines and be like, hey, see that down there? Run really fast, put that in, push green button, run really fast back.
That's a very good plan.
But apparently they're only working with who they've got. I guess it would take too much time to find the right Quicksilver variant and bring him in and explain everything to him. So, but yeah, they've got the plan now. I referred to them as the Nerd Squad.
Oh yes,
working on making the multiplier work with Victor's new piece. And so Mobius says, "Hey, let's go get some pie."
And Sylvie is immediately like, "Are you kidding me?" I think this is actually where she mentions the ticking clock.
Yes, it is. We referenced that earlier in our conversation, but this is where in the story that actually happens. And at the same time, she also points out that Mobius refuses to look to see where his place is on the timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of see Mobius take it. Like, yeah, I want to, but I don't want to.
Yeah, Mobius has made a very specific choice. He's got a good, solid reason for it. And he is sticking with his guns, but it doesn't seem unreasonable to him for somebody to disagree with his choice.
Mm-hmm.
But Sylvie's mad about it.
Oh, and she has very good reason to be as well.
Sylvie is there to make sure that we as the audience and them as a group of people who have been detached from any real world remember that there are real worlds out there that this affects.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down in my notes, forgotten humanity behind the problem, but it's not just humanity we're talking about, because there are other sentient species out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Although it seems like, other than season 1 when they go to Lamentis, and even that, everyone there seems human.
Yeah, there were no real alien beings there.
So the TVA seems to be very human-centric, which, is probably most likely a budget choice.
Yes.
And also just to narrow down the story so they're not stuck in trying to deal with everything in the universe.
Yeah, that would be.
But still, it is a very Earth-centric, human-centric story.
Yes.
And speaking of variant humans of various sorts, we cut to Brad. Who is basically suggesting rebellion.
Yeah. He's trying to rally Dox's troops in order to take the TVA, because everybody wants to take the TVA.
Well, except he doesn't want the TVA.
No, that's true. What he wants is to return to his life as a movie.
Yeah, he wants his life on the timeline back. Yeah. And Dox is pissed at him for doing it earlier.
Yeah.
It's interesting. In my notes, I put disappointed mom.
Yeah.
Because we had that moment in the earlier episode where they have that forehead touch or whatever it was. And that never gets called back. We never find out what their relationship was.
Well, not yet.
Based on the rest of this episode, I don't think we're going to find out.
We have been promised episodes or an episode next week.
Well, yes, I know that. I'm just referring to what happens to Dox.
Well, oh yeah. We may never find out. No, this is true. We may be left to just take wild guesses, but she does have a that headbutt is rather motherly. And her reaction to Brad's suggestion of, hey, let's go live our lives on the timeline. I mean, she feels betrayed.
Yeah. The way she says, oh, we all know about your time as an actor. Mm-hmm. I was just like, oh, mom, stop it.
Yeah.
I felt that in my spine.
Yeah. Mom wanted you to grow up to become a general of the TVA like she was, not to become
not an actor in the Zaniac movie.
Exactly. Not only an actor, but essentially a B-movie actor.
Probably, yeah. Although that looked like a decent-sized premiere.
Yeah. 70s, any excuse to have a party.
Anyways, that conversation gets cut off by B-15 and D-90 showing up, and B-15 trying her best to convince them to help defend the TVA against Renslayer or any other attack.
Yep. And then B-15 leaves and gives them time to think about it.
Yeah. And I like how B-15 points out that they both believe in the people of the TVA and want to protect them. B-15 is very good at knowing who she's talking to and telling them what they need, being honest about it, but telling them what they need to hear to convince them.
It's not lying to them at all or trying to deceive. It is bending the argument to their needs.
Mm-hmm. Again, heart of the TVA.
Yeah, my case is strong.
Yeah, no, when you said it, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. And then we cut back to Sylvie, who has ended up, despite not wanting pie.
It just seems like there was, no matter what she did, Sylvie was going to end up in Pie Land.
Of course.
I feel like the quarters of the TVA adjusted themselves, so she ended up in Pie Land.
I tend to believe that she did get turned around and ended up where she did. But yeah, the TVA does have some TARDIS-like attributes sometimes, and seems like you end up where you're supposed to be rather than where you want to be necessarily. Right. And we get a great conversation here between Sylvie and Loki. If B-15 is the heart of the TVA, this is the heart of the episode.
Yes.
This is where most of the ideas and themes come across.
Yeah. There's becomes a very clear opposition between the two. They're clearly drawn sides. Mm-hmm. I believe it's Loki, because I didn't write down. I believe it is Loki who says destruction is easy, fixing is hard, and hope is hard. Sylvie is focusing on what has been destroyed and what could be destroyed. She's looking at a very negative, destructive kind of position, and we cannot blame her. She's been living in apocalypses for a very long time. Loki has been focusing on what has been saved and what could be saved.
Yeah, and she kind of points out, you're not usually the optimist here. Yes.
It's not usually the optimist, but Loki does seem to generally not look towards destruction so much as, I mean, even in his most evil days, it was more like control.
That's true.
He wanted to create a place that he was important.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at there's been a good amount of criticism thrown at Loki in the Avengers, the original Avengers, because they're kind of like, so why are you doing this? The why is because he wants to rule something. His opportunity has been given Earth once the Chitauri make a mess of it. So he was looking at, they're going to destroy, I get to rebuild in my own image and become their god.
Yeah.
So now we've kind of shifted to a less self-centered, childish concept into a more grown-up and egalitarian concept.
Yeah. Well, he points out that it's basically now up to them to protect the timelines.
Yes.
And that's when Sylvie says, no matter what we do, we're playing God.
I love this exchange, all right? So Loki says, I quoted this directly, I can't just give people free will, then walk away. The timelines are free. We have to protect them. That's a parenting concept.
Mm-hmm.
We created this person.
We created this life. We now have
need to
watch over it.
Protect it and guide it, but it's going to be its own thing. Sylvie counters with, sounds like whatever we do, we're playing God. And then Loki, there's a beat. And to me, it sounds like it kind of occurs to him here. It's something he's kind of forgotten. We are gods. He's been running around in a rather mortal form for a while.
That's true.
Dealing with a very big problem, but dealing with it in a way that his godhood is not the issue.
Well, he's been here in the TVA this whole time, and the wards are up and he can't do any of his magic.
There is no magic that he can use.
So all he has is his wits and the form he's in. And there are 2 points that I wanted to make with that exchange. The first one is, this was exactly he who remains' plan.
Yep.
Was Sylvie and Loki take over the TVA and guide it.
Yep. Which Loki thought was not a bad plan in the beginning.
That's true. And he seems to be guiding Sylvie towards, this is the best plan.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that in the comics, Loki is a god, but for the past 10 years or so, he has not been the god of mischief or the god of lies.
Hmm.
He is the god of stories.
Oh, interesting. Which means that interpretation of Loki would want a multiverse because, boy, there are a lot more stories that way. And
Uh-huh.
you can actually look at a singular character in said story and see where they diverge.
Yeah. So it feels like this Loki is on that path to become a god of stories rather than a god of mischief. And then from there, we go back to Brad and Docs discussing their options. Docs is like, B-15 has integrity. No matter what,
Yep.
even if I don't agree with her, I at least know that. But Brad, of course, is like, yeah, I don't trust her.
Because he doesn't trust anybody with integrity.
He's an actor. What does he need integrity for? Speaking as a former theater major. And this is when Ravonna and Miss Minutes arrive and ask for all of their help to take back over. And this is one of my favorite little exchanges here when Docs says to Miss Minutes, "You're really disappointing. This is really disappointing." "I know. I'm working on myself." And Ravonna says, "Hey, anyone who helps me out, you want a life on the timeline? It's yours."
Yep.
And that's all they needed to get Brad on their side.
Seriously. When Ravonna comes in, she talks about the two variants that are essentially taking over the TVA. There's such a level of disgust in her voice.
Yeah, she has such I mean, that's been her attitudes towards especially these variants since we first met her. Even though she now knows she is a variant and that all of them are variants, these variants in particular, she still has a very high disdain for.
I mean, they're not only variants, they're variants of the same person.
And they're variants of Loki, who traditionally is not a good person.
Oh.
I'm thankful that the box is not shown after. Because Miss Minutes starts up the device that traps everyone but Brad in the box.
Yep. And I don't know if you watched Miss Minutes while you heard the box getting
smaller. Yeah, I did.
She has this look of evil as the box starts, and then as the box is getting smaller and smaller,
and she is
carnage.
She is excited to watch. She has gone full psychopath here.
And the sound effects in this are very effective. They don't show anything graphic, but there is
but you know exactly what happened.
Squish, crunch, and then dripping.
Yeah. Ugh. Thankfully, like I said, we don't see any of that, and instead we cut back to the nerd trio.
Who are very much enjoying their work.
Yes, although Victor is easily distracted by the existence of a hot cocoa machine.
Listen, I'm easily distracted by tasty objects, so I can understand.
Yeah, although most hot cocoa that I have had out of a machine is not good.
Yeah.
It is usually really watery, and compared to homemade cocoa is just far inferior. But to be honest, the cocoa in these scenes looks like it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
it's like
really
actually thick and a nice milky brown.
Yeah.
So maybe their hot cocoa machine is better than the ones I've had. But
and tragically, that technology vanished on us when it made decent hot cocoa. And TVA soup.
But while Victor and Mobius are discussing the hot cocoa machine, we get our first signs of Miss Minutes' infiltration of the system as the TemPads are no longer working.
It's an interesting process because they build it very well. First,
Mm-hmm.
Obi looks at his temp pad and it doesn't work. They look at Casey's, it doesn't work. But the scene is focusing on Victor and Mobius and the hot cocoa.
Right.
They're trying to be subtle about it in the very beginning.
Yeah, they
Until,
build up to it, and then, we get the next scene, which is B-15 discovering the bodies.
which
Again, thankfully
impressive
not seen
reaction
on
on her
camera.
part too. I think she
But
was
yeah, her
fantastic
reaction
for
tells you a lot.
Yeah.
And she pulls out her temp pad and, access denied.
And we've seen that shot of the temp pad in the end credits.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, we've actually gotten to that point in the plot.
There we go. And, we've also seen the hot cocoa machine
In the
end credits as well.
Though we've all noticed the TVA soup.
Soup, yes. It's funny because, it's got the big, hot coffee in big letters, and then below it in smaller letters, chocolate soup.
Yep.
It's like, chocolate soup? That...
I mean, what is
I can go for some chocolate soup.
Chocolate bisque.
The scene between Victor and D90 is so cute at first.
Well, and the first time I watched it, I kept wondering if Victor's focus on the hot cocoa was an intentional distraction. And I kept wondering that for a while, especially when he offered it to D90, because okay, is he making sure it's not poisoned?
Or did he secretly poison it?
Exactly.
Or, no, I'm totally there with you. I was like, he's doing something nefarious.
Yeah.
And he's covering it up by being this nice, sweet little, would you like some hot cocoa?
Yeah. No, what he's being
But
is
no,
great.
that is Victor.
Yeah.
That he is legitimately...
Well, and in this case, he was a man raised in the 19th century. I mean, not particularly under the best of circumstances, at least in the beginning, but he would have learned a much more specific set of manners than we learned in the 20th century or in the 21st century. And sharing a hot beverage would definitely have been part of it, especially since it's no thing to make 2 cups of hot cocoa.
Right.
And you share it with your guest first. And in this case, D90 would be Victor's guest. He's showing that he is a polite man. He likes to put people at ease, see to their comfort, because that's going to help him land a sale. Yeah, I feel like this becomes a demonstration of his character, but it also kind of makes the audience go, oh God, oh, what are you doing? What is happening?
What are you doing? What's going on?
Going on here,
but
guys?
No, the danger is not from Victor at all.
Nope.
Instead, he turns around to make another cup, and D90 is pruned from behind by Brad.
Oh, Brad.
And then in the meantime, Obi is finally figuring out what's happening with the TemPads and everything. Although not before accusing Mobius of downloading unauthorized games.
Only did that once. Wasn't going to do it again.
I'm not going to make that mistake twice. Like I said, I would love a TVA series.
Yeah.
I would love to see the inner workings of the TVA during non-emergencies.
Well, and it leads me to some questions about what is in the script and what is improvised.
Okay.
Because there's some certain level of naturalism that comes, especially from Mobius Owen Wilson, when he's interacting with stuff or with other folks, that it sounds like they might have gone off script a bit. Like the argument of who goes out on the gangway between Mobius and Loki. That actually sounded a little improvised. And this could have been an improvised line.
I can see that. Unfortunately, that even in the behind the scenes sort of stuff, when they do those Marvels Assembled, that's usually not the kind of information that we find out. They'll make reference to, and we were able to go off script sometimes, but they'll never give us specifics of like what scenes were improvised versus what was from the page.
Those of you who spend too much time on YouTube may have run into Watch Mojo before. which is, yeah, basically lots of little clips under some theme. And they have done Marvel's improvised lines before.
True.
So I keep hoping that there's more of that for this series out there. But I will not hold my breath, but I will wish.
We can hope. And so at this point, everyone meets up to kind of catch up on what's going wrong.
With a very artful spill of the cocoa and D90's time stick. It looks like a murder scene.
It really does. Yeah. Although, again, that cocoa looks much thicker and more delicious than most cocoa I've had out of a machine. Yeah. So at least it doesn't look like a blood stain or anything like that here. But yeah, Loki picks up the pruning stick. And so now we've got Brad with a stick and Loki with a stick. And so you weren't here for this conversation, but I had that theory in the first episode.
I did hear that bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I kept going back and forth, like, is it going to be Brad? Is it going to be Loki? Is it going to be Brad? Is it going to be Loki? But they quickly realize that it's got to be Renslayer behind all of this. Mm-hmm. And I like Loki's deduction here.
Mm-hmm.
He is, the phrase I use is acting to the top of his intelligence.
Yes.
He realizes, no, she wants the TVA. She's still here.
Yeah.
And sure enough, our next scene is Brad bringing Victor to be interrogated by her.
And Victor plays it semi-dumb on this one. And that's, oh, thank goodness you're okay. Which, yeah, Ren did
Good try.
Yeah, nice try. But... swing and a miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Renslayer is completely in command, and Victor tries to be in. Actually, I think he stays in salesman mode because it's a way to handle stress.
Yeah, well, and later we see how he's using that to stall, taking as much time as he can, because he knows at this point he has figured out these guys are the bad guys.
Yep.
And this Victor Timely is a good guy.
Yeah.
It seems like, I was expecting at some point for him to
turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, he's on our side the entire time. In the meantime, Sylvie and Loki go off to try to find Victor, get separated when the elevator doors close with Sylvie inside. And here's where we reached Loki's future. The time-slipped Loki shows up.
Yep. Now, one of the things I feel like they did in this episode, and I feel like they did it on purpose, was that they didn't do any highlights to say we've gone back to where he was time slipping in episode 1.
The only thing they really did was they used the same shot of him and holding the timer
and that's
in his hand.
That is what they chose to do, but that, unless you're like actively focused, it can take you a moment to go, oh, wait a minute, this is back to episode 1. Once he looks at the timer, you're like,
yeah,
okay, this is episode 1. Now, it's also the difference of episode 1, Loki is not wearing a jacket.
Yes, but that is a subtle difference that if you're not paying attention, you may not notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like he's wearing a completely different outfit. He's not like one Loki in an orange jumpsuit.
Exactly. The differences between episode 1 and episode 4 Loki are subtle enough that, yeah, you're going to get it in about 5 seconds, but you're going to have that 5 seconds of, wait, what? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And I like that choice.
Yes.
That feels, I've had a few complaints here and there that they've been kind of talking down to the audience and being like, oh, I'm in the past now. Yeah. They didn't do that here.
Yeah.
They let you soak in it and come to the realization yourself.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love current Loki seeing past Loki from behind and looking down at the stick and going, oh. Well, I guess I know what I need to do now.
Well, that solves that mystery.
Yes. I wondered who pruned me. It was me.
And then, of course, the phone starts ringing.
Yeah. Although I will point out the one thing I was wrong about with my theory in episode 1 was I had assumed that Sylvie was talking to current Loki when she said, "Oh, there you are."
Right.
But no, she was talking to past Loki, and when current Loki prunes, she's like, "What the hell was that?" Don't worry, this will all make sense. And then we get the phone, which I'm a little disappointed by.
Admittedly, but I think that was done extremely intentionally. The phone drove me nuts because the phone's ringing kind of. I'm an anti-phone call kind of person. I love that my general system of communication equals silent mode and talk to the
And
voicemail.
texting, and yeah.
Yeah. So that constant, very jarring ring. I counted it the second time. Apparently, it was 5 rings.
That's less than I would have guessed.
Yeah, me too. And on the other side, it's just OB. There you are.
Yeah. Now, if they had not had the phone ringing in the first episode,
Right.
then having the phone ring here and having the moment of, "Oh, who is it?
Mhm.
What is it? What's going on?" And then picking it up and it being OB.
Yeah.
That's a fun, like, tension release. Whereas when you set it up as a mystery
Yeah.
in episode 1, turning it into what to me felt like a joke in episode 4 didn't feel like a decent resolution.
You were unsatisfied by this
I was, yes. It was an unsatisfying revelation to have it just be OB going, "What's going on? Where are you guys?" I mean, among other things, you have to ask, how did OB know to ring that phone?
That's a fair question.
Like I said, it just wasn't satisfying to me. But I guess it works for the moment.
Yes.
And this conversation leads to my favorite humorous moment of the show. When they explain that Miss Minutes is slowing him down, Obi's like, "Well, I could reboot the system, take her offline."
Which equals turning off the safety system, which means people can use magic inside the TVA, to which their response is,
"Turn it off!" I love the look they give to each other. Yeah. They're like,
"Wait,
hey, this is better. Do it now.
Do it.
And then we get back to Victor, who is in full stalling mode. And there are so many moments in here that are quotable. That there are so many moments in this specific episode that I was like, "Oh, I gotta call that one out. I gotta call that one out. I gotta call that one out." Miss Minutes starts glitching from the reboot.
That was kind of scary to watch. I mean, the way that they did it, it was scary because
it was a little creepy the way she starts glitching out. But then Victor being like, "No, mocking isn't necessary." I laughed at that. And then the final moment with her where she's like, "Victor, I need to tell you. She blanks out for a second and then just comes back. "You'll never be him."
And look at when she said, "You'll never be him." She's like, one eye is half gone. There's code missing. She's shredded.
Yeah. And then she disappears and all you see is the relief of he who remains. And it's like, you're never going to be him. And the tone of her voice when she does it, everything was just dead on perfect. And then she, "Hi, I'm Miss Minutes, and the time is..." Yeah, it was
beautifully run.
Very creepy, beautifully done. Just absolutely a perfect moment. And then the power goes down, and Brad heads out to see what's going on.
Oh, Brad.
Sorry, Brad, you're getting enchanted by Sylvie now.
You are.
She's got her magic back, and
You do.
she's gonna use it.
Oh, yeah. I love how Brad re-enters the room as, possessed by Sylvie.
Yes, Sylvie is not good at disguising who she is. She may be good at enchanting other people and taking them over, but she is not good at pretending she is that other person. Because Brad comes in, and even if you had missed the previous scene where she enchanted him, if you had just seen Brad leave, Brad come back acting like this, you'd immediately say, oh, something's up.
Yeah. I mean, he like pops his head in and then literally saunters into the room. There's a sway to
Mm-hmm.
the hips. There's he heel toe walking. He
Yeah.
spins the stick. I mean, it's not only has some sexy slither to it, but also has some sinisterness to it,
Mm-hmm.
which makes perfect sense considering.
Oh, yeah. Considering who's actually in charge of the body at that moment, makes perfect sense. And quickly prunes Ravona.
Yep.
I thought she was out of the picture at the end of last episode, but I think she's really out of the picture now.
I think it would be hilarious if she was actually back next episode and you just can't get rid of her.
Well, I mean, there are definite ways for her to be back, considering how the episode ends, but we'll get there in just a minute. Because Loki and Sylvie grab Victor and run.
Yep.
Now we get to our climax.
Time to get Victor Timely's temporal aura scan.
Yeah, they set that up as something that seems threatening,
And they actually
and then
did
it's
that
nothing.
quite a few times. That
Yeah.
fully, this is threatening, this is scary, this is threatening, this is scary, and then oh nope, no, it's not. But
Okay.
they went with it was put your head into the scanner.
Yeah.
It had that Dune, put your hand in the box feel to it.
Yeah, but the scanner is open and
Yeah.
visible for everyone to see. It's not
They're
like the
still waiting for his
box
head
where,
to explode. But the aura is recognized, and the system's really perky about it.
yeah. Welcome, he who remains. And as soon as the aura is scanned and he's recognized, the blast doors open and things are even worse than Obi expected.
It's not going well out there.
No. Things look like they are on the brink of collapse. The radiation is even stronger than what they were expecting it to be. And Loki volunteers to go out there and do it. But Victor, and I think rightly, points out that he knows how the throughput multiplier works. And if something goes wrong, it should be him out there rather than Loki. Now, there's one thing that kind of frustrates me. It's a trope that they use a lot, is that people who stutter are cowards, or vice versa.
Right.
And I feel like, especially with his time to be brave, with all of that, it feels like they kind of leaned into that here as well. And as someone who used to have a speech impediment and knows people who have dealt with stuttering, the two are not connected at all.
Their connection is not a natural connection. It's a learned connection that is learned when somebody with a speech impediment tries to speak and receives a negative reaction because of it, and therefore they become afraid to speak. It's not it's
but
not
that's
a direct correlation, it's causation.
Right. And that's a fear of public speaking or embarrassing oneself with your speech, but that has nothing to do with bravery in an emergency situation.
Yes.
People who stutter are not naturally cowardly in all situations. They may be nervous or afraid or anxious or afraid to speak because of their stutter. But like I said, it's an old trope that I think should be retired at this point. And unfortunately, they kind of leaned into it here, and I wish they hadn't. So I've said many positive things about this episode, but I have to point out when I feel like they could have done better.
I feel like they did establish Victor as having some cowardly traits in the last episode, but I also think that this is a worthy ding on the episode, on the series, that they chose both a somewhat cowardly personality and a stutter, because now it puts those two things together, and that's the trope we don't want.
Yeah, exactly.
So Victor suits up, and I want to talk about this suit a little bit.
Okay.
Because when I did listen to, as much as I was able to listen to of episode 1, I wanted to reach through the radio and smack both of you. Because I cannot remember exactly what you thought the suit was, but it was not it. This is a bomb suit. This is the suit that demolitions experts wear when they go to defuse a bomb.
Okay.
Yeah. It has some vague connection to old radiation suits as well, but only a little bit. The radiation suits didn't get puffy. They were more plasticky. But yeah, it more or less is a bomb suit.
All right, I can see that. I just thought of it as like a space suit, like an external environment that you cannot survive in on your own.
Yeah. But all that,
which I think it functions as that as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely there as protection against the time radiation.
But all that extra padding that is on the suit, is that design is taken from bomb suits.
Yeah, now that you say it, that
and
does
you're going,
make sense.
oh yeah, right.
Yeah, and let's talk about this finale. The blast doors open, Victor runs out.
And Chekhov's pasta.
He is immediately spaghettified.
I was not expecting that.
I was not expecting it either.
That at all. They've done, I'm now beginning to think that this is very deliberate, in that they gave us so many setups that fizzled, essentially. The aura scan, the telephone. And so now they're doing the thing that we are just saying, yeah, he's going to do what Mobius did and take a walk down the gangplank, and it's going to be stressful. But no, he steps out and is immediately spaghettified. And everybody's like, what?
Yeah, everyone is in shock, including myself as I was watching. I was like, oh, well, now what?
Exactly. And the well, now what is nothing. I mean,
the loom explodes. We get bright white into silent black.
Yes. Well, and the explosion is very much a atomic explosion, because it has the wave coming at, our last shot is Loki watching the wave come at the TVA.
Yeah.
And then the kaboom, and then black.
Yeah, and they hold that black for a good few seconds.
They do. And then they roll the credits, and you're like, And
did you notice the credits music? It was completely different.
Yeah, no, it's very different, and it's very little of it, if I remember correctly.
It was very minimalistic.
Yeah.
And it was really creepy sounding.
Yeah.
A lot of plucked strings and very horror music, tensing.
Yeah.
They do not want you to leave this episode feeling good.
Nope. I mean, I'm over here saying it's the end of the TVA as we know it, and I feel fine, but it's on the basis of there are 2 more episodes.
Yeah.
Not on the basis of where they left us emotionally by design.
Yeah, if you didn't know how many episodes this was, or you didn't know that this was part of a larger universe, if you just thought this was some sort of like Twilight Zone-ish story, it could totally end here, and you wouldn't necessarily feel good about it, but it would feel like a resolution.
Yeah.
It would definitely feel like an ending.
Yeah.
So what surprised me was that they didn't even give us a mid-credit scene.
No, they didn't. They gave us nothing.
Like in the last season, when Loki was pruned, they gave us that mid-credit scene of Loki and the other Lokis in the vast wasteland at the end of time.
Yeah.
Here,
Nothing.
Nope. Absolutely nothing. So what do you think is next?
That is a really good question. I feel like we're going to get somebody waking up in a field. I don't know where or what this field is, but it just feels like we're going to get somebody waking up in a field. They're going to be thrown, and wild guess here, thrown into new and exciting timelines and have to try to figure out how to reunify everything. It might be quite a bit like in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where he's going across multiple universes, multiple timelines, and changing throughout. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're not going to have that level of special effects or anything like that, but it may demonstrate how exactly all these timelines have now been completely tangled with each other.
Yeah.
You no longer have threads, you now have shredded fiber.
Yeah. My feeling, this is partially based on my own personal theories and then partially based on the fact that we have seen in the trailers that Loki does more time slipping than what we saw in the first 2 episodes. We see him time slip into a scene that is an outdoor sports and recreation. It's a place that sells jet skis. So my feeling is we're going to get Loki time slipping into various places and probably putting the team back together.
Yeah.
In one form or another.
Yeah.
And so that will be his new goal, is to get everyone back together and fix it.
Yeah.
As best as he can.
That is a very solid theory. A solid plot line while we're at it. So episode 5 is getting the band back together, and episode 6 is actual finale.
Yeah, that would be my theory. And that pretty much wraps it up, although there is one little notation that I have to add, which is that other than the recap, this is a 0 hair flip episode.
No.
I was as surprised as you are.
Well, and consider there's kind of minimal Loki this episode because we are cutting back and forth to so many other parties.
We do cut back and forth a lot, but he does run a lot, and usually he'll run, skid, and hair flip.
Yeah.
Usually he'll end a skid with his hair back in his face and be like, gotta take care of that. But no, it was all in place this time. And like I said, the only hair flip we got was in the recap, and I'm not counting that as a new hair flip.
That's not a new hair flip. That's an old hair flip.
That brings us to the conclusion of another episode, but probably not the conclusion of Loki and the MCU. Assuming there is a 5th episode of the show as promised, we'll be back next week to discuss it. Don't forget you can send in your thoughts and theories, or questions you'd like answered in a future scripted episode via email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter @GeektownPodcast, Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown @mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown, population us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.